Multiple HBCUs are on lockdown due to threats in the wake of Charlie Kirk's murder. Here's an excerpt from NBC News.
Historically black colleges and universities across the country are currently under lockdown after a slew of threats that were called in today. Moments ago, Spelman College announcing a shelter in place over the threats, including at Clark Atlanta University, which is near their campus.
Other HBCUs receiving threats today: Hampton University, Virginia State University, Alabama University, Bethune-Cookman University, and Southern University. The schools urging students to remain vigilant, saying these lockdowns will be in place until further notice.
So this is where we are. It's not one, not two, multiple HBCUs, multiple historically black colleges, universities. They're on lockdown after receiving potential threats on Thursday, including Alabama State University, Virginia State University, Hampton in Virginia, Southern University in Louisiana, Clark, as NBC mentioned, in Atlanta. Spelman College, too, located near Clark Atlanta University, also implemented shelter-in-place protocols as a precautionary measure due to its proximity. The lockdown measures come in the wake of the shooting at Utah Valley University on Wednesday, where Charlie Kirk was killed at his speaking engagement on campus. This morning, the DNC headquarters also received a bomb threat. More violence, more threats. FBI released a statement regarding the threats on Thursday, saying federal investigators are aware of hoax threat calls to a number of historically black institutions. The FBI takes these threats very seriously because it puts innocent people at risk, the agency said, adding that there is currently no information to indicate a credible threat. So while the FBI downplays those threats, the president, Donald Trump, says the radical left is to blame. The radical left is the true threat. Listen.
It's a long past time for all Americans and the media to confront the fact that violence and murder are the tragic consequence of demonizing those with whom you disagree day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible. For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today, and it must stop right now. My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to other political violence, including the organizations that fund it and support it, as well as those who go after our judges, law enforcement officials, and everyone else who brings order to our country. From the attack on my life in Butler, Pennsylvania last year, which killed a husband and father, to the attacks on ICE agents, to the vicious murder of a healthcare executive in the streets of New York, to the shooting of House Majority Leader Steve Scalise and 3 others, radical left political violence has hurt too many innocent people and taken too many lives.
The last part, the last sentence, I think a lot of reasonable people could agree with. He seemed to skip over the president did some things. Plot on Gretchen Whitmer, right? Michigan governor, the lawmakers who were just murdered. Our side, your side. Here we go. Jonathan Chait of The Atlantic warning the most important move Trump made in his remarks was to define political violence as an exclusively left-wing tactic, listing a series of events carefully selected to implicate his enemies and exonerate his allies. Trump's list goes back to 2017, the shooting of Steve Scalise, but it omits the shootings of 2 Democratic legislators at their homes earlier this summer. It does not mention the 2020 attempted kidnapping of Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, or the brutal attack on former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband in 2022, which Trump used again and again as a punchline to mock the victim. Notably, Trump's list ignores the shooting just 1 month ago at CDC headquarters, in which a man protesting COVID-19 vaccines fired more than 180 shots at the building and killed a police officer, but includes attacks on ICE agents, which have not involved gunfire. Trump, of course, handed out pardons to supporters who brutalized police officers on January 6, 2021. This week, his allies in the Senate defended his bestowal of military honors upon Ashley Babbitt. Remember her? She was shot trying to smash her way through the Capitol in the insurrection attempt. When asked by Fox News about the radical right, here is what President Donald Trump said.
Do about our country with that, because we have radicals on the right as well. We have radicals on the left. People are watching all of these videos and cheering. Some people are cheering that Charlie was killed. How do we fix this country? How do we come back together?
I'll tell you something that's going to get me in trouble, but I couldn't care less. The radicals on the right oftentimes are radical because they don't want to see crime. They don't want to see crime.
Worried about the border.
They're saying, we don't want these people coming in. We don't want you burning our shopping centers. We don't want you shooting our people in the middle of the street. The radicals on the left are the problem.
Yeah, it's the left, the left, the left, the left. You see, he solved it. It's just one side. If you could just stop what you're doing on the left, there'd be no violence. And crime's also getting solved under his watch. So speaking of the radical far right influencers and violent extremists are posting identifying details about people they view as celebrating or glorifying the murder of right-wing activist Charlie Kirk. Campaign has been swift, widespread. It's already led to at least one person losing their job, others receiving death threats. People posting the identifying information include Chaya Richey, who runs the hugely influential hate-filled Libs of TikTok account on X. Trump whisperer Laura Loomer. I mean, you know she was going to get in on it. And former Proud Boy leader Enrique Tarrio. You celebrate this, we're going to hunt you down. We're going to find you. We're going to ruin your life. Central hub of this activity is a website called Charlie's Murderers, which was registered in the early evening on the day Kirk was shot. It's revealing certain personal information, such as social media usernames, email addresses of individuals the operators believe were celebrating the horrific murder. Website asks people to submit a potential target's full name, location, employer information, as well as screenshots of incriminating social media posts via email. An about section on the website, added on Thursday morning, says this is not a doxxing website. Website is a lawful data aggregator of publicly available information. It has been created for the purposes of public education. I mean, that sounds like something that when you click on Wikipedia, this is what Wikipedia says. We're here to just give you the facts and inform you. And by the way, donate. One of the first names listed on the site was Rachel Gilmore, an independent journalist at Bubble Pop Media, who wrote on X that she was terrified to think of how far-right fans of Kirk aching for more violence could very well turn this into an even more radicalizing moment. Well, they now believe their fears have been proven right and feel they have a right to retaliate, regardless of who actually was behind the initial shooting. I've gotten emails and DMs promising to find out where I live, Gilmore says. I have folks claiming my information is all over 4chan, telling me in the same breath that they hope I get, well, they want her assaulted and killed. Telling me to have fun walking the streets of my city, which they name. Quinn Huddleston, another name listed on the site, told Wired he has received countless messages since his name was published on the site, some urging him to take his own life. Huddleston also says that people have threatened his life, claiming to know where he lives. However, he points out that the information shared on the website was out of date, and as a result, the threats contained inaccurate information. I did not glorify anyone's death, says Huddleston. I don't believe political violence is the answer to anything on either side. They took a comment I made prior to Kirk even passing, and now, as radicals usually do, spin it to work for their agenda, whatever that may be. Prominent members of the MAGA movement are using Kirk's death to call for a civil war with leftists. They accuse of inciting violence. The Republican establishment, along with a fair number of Democrats, are mourning him as a martyr for the American values of debate and civic engagement. Even while some critics argue that he was divisive and extreme, some of those critics have already faced severe consequences. And well, you're looking at one. Matthew Dowd, political analyst for MSNBC, found himself out of a job swiftly on Thursday after on-air comments about Kirk in the immediate wake of the shooting, long before confirmation of Kirk's death. Dowd had observed in a Wednesday appearance on the liberal-leaning cable news channel that Kirk was, quote, constantly sort of pushing this sort of hate speech aimed at certain groups. He added, I always go back to hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which lead to hateful actions. And I think that's the environment we're in. I almost want to read it again. Commentators asked a question, he answers it. Network, though, cut ties with Dowd. I mean, this was fast, folks. He apologized on his Blue Sky account. MSNBC President Rebecca Cutler issued a separate statement. During our breaking news coverage of the shooting of Charlie Kirk, Matthew Dowd made comments that were inappropriate, insensitive, and unacceptable, she said. We apologize for his statements, as has he. There's no place for violence in America, political or otherwise. Dowd also had a university speaking engagement canceled. The irony of his termination, slew of similar firings over the past 24 hours, is that Kirk and Turning Point USA, the conservative youth group he co-founded, branded themselves as the ultimate defenders of free speech. Yet his supporters, regardless of their stated ideals of free expression and complaints about cancel culture, have been swift to extract retribution against those who have intimated Kirk was a dangerous ideologue or effectively brought a violent end upon himself. But the witch hunt is just led by far-right influencers. Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau, top State Department, said in a Thursday morning post, in light of yesterday's horrific assassination of a leading political figure, I want to underscore that foreigners who glorify violence and hatred are not welcome visitors to our country. I've been disgusted to see some on social media praising, rationalizing, or making light of the event, and have directed our consular officials to undertake appropriate actions, Landau added. Please feel free to bring such comments by foreigners to my attention so that the State Department can protect the American people. From what? Speech, even ugly speech, angry speech, mean speech. I am particularly interested, Tehran, about the case of Matthew Dowd. No matter which side you're on, you've seen his face, respected, former George Bush, W. Bush aide. I'm trying to figure out what he apologized for and what he was fired for. What is your take?
Well, he was fired for the exact same thing that I'm fighting for respect for Charlie Kirk's death for, which is the freedom of speech. He was fired because he said something that they felt might have been viewed as controversial, even though at the time it was a very valid statement that a pundit could possibly have. That is what they're there to do. They're there to discuss things. And at times, when you're discussing things in real time, things don't play out because hindsight is always 2020. At that time, it came off something much later, which seemed much darker than what it really was. So he was fired for that. He was fired to save an executive's job. He was fired to save face. He was fired so that there wasn't backlash. The eggshells that we walk on are the things we're actually crumbling under. We need to stop doing that. Cancel culture has gotten out of control, and it is making it so that people cannot or do not feel free to express themselves freely. There's a difference between disrespect, hate speech, and violent speech. Disrespectful speech is something that we need to understand. Your feelings are arbitrary when it comes to freedom of speech. Just because you're offended does not mean you're right. On the flip side, just because you're offensive doesn't mean that you're profound. There is a fine line, and we need to find that balance.
I guess I just, again, here we are. What about just truth? He's a commentator who did not make profound statements here. He was asked about the climate and the discourse, and he said Kirk was constantly sort of pushing this sort of hate speech aimed at certain groups. Where's the lie? He added, I always go back to hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which lead to hateful actions. And I think that's the environment we're in. See, the environment we're in is you can't say the sky is blue. You can't analyze something in a very basic way. Again, I wouldn't even pay him for that comment. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but it's not profound. He looked out the window, he saw what he saw, and he regurgitated it. Fired. This is the dangerous climate we're living in, where someone who proudly believed, pushed certain things. I mean, Charlie Kirk said really wild things proudly. He had a right to say them, and he had millions of people who believed, agreed, cheered, 1 million a day, something like that, watch his podcast. He loved this. He loved the debate, rigorous debate, angry debate. He had fun in ways that some people found offensive. We can't even tell the truth now. And why bother to go outside, Tehran? Why? This is ridiculous. That's why I asked you what he said that he was apologizing for and what he got fired for, because I honestly can't figure it out.
I think most people are trying to wrap their heads around everything that happened. When tragedy strikes, oftentimes we make things more tragic by our overreaction and our inactions to said tragedy. So people are just lashing out. They're angry, they're upset, they're tired. And to be very fair, the president of the United States, the leader who's supposed to unite us, is doing more to divide us than ever. It's almost as if this president wants to lead us towards a civil war. It's let's blame the radical left, let's forget the radical right. When it came to Nazis, there were good and bad people on both sides. But when it came to this point of view, when we clearly have seen crimes in the past by the radical right, those are all forgiven, whether it's January 6th or shootings or the Hortman and Hoffman or whatever it is. Those are all understandable and justifiable. The radical left is the problem. You are the president to all of us, sir. You are the president to all of us. We have HBCUs under attack because of a lot of your rhetoric. Please understand this. This is not a movie. This should not be higher learning. Great movie, by the way. Omar Epps, Tyra Banks at their finest.
Loved it.
But loved the movie, hated the premise. That is what we're lending ourselves towards. This is the first shot that seems to be fired in the slippery slope of an avalanche that we will not be able to recover from. Please understand, this is not your moment to disdain. It's your moment to shine.
Wow. Well said. And I think the empathy is real. I was on with Jank and John right after we learned main show. Charlie Kirk had passed away, been murdered. And I felt overwhelming empathy and sympathy. And this is gross. And by the way, you can stop saying this is not who we are, America. It is absolutely who we are. It's absolutely who we are. So if you're thinking of putting that on a t-shirt, someone out there, it's dead. It's we are there. It's absolutely, this is America, 100%, red, white, and blue. And it's a sickness. And you're right. It seems as though President Trump, remember, he said this even before the suspect, he's made several statements. The one this morning that we played for you, but also he said things yesterday along the same lines. I don't know where we go from here, but I have my suspicions about whether there'll be more slow singing and flower bringing, because this is America.